So this is a video topic I actually wanted to do yesterday. I just didn't quite have the time to get around to it, but I have the time now. And that's sort of looking into the comments that Micah Parsons made on his podcast a couple days ago. That's been sort of the hot topic of the last few days, addressing the criticism of the media in terms of the coverage of the Cowboys. Which, to me, the comments were just flat out idiotic and stupid, and I'm going to get into that in a sec. I'm not going to play the clip, but to sort of give you sort of an idea of what he said and almost kind of do an impression, what he basically said was, yeah, I don't know why the media has all this criticism for the Cowboys and not the Eagles or the 49ers. Like, keep that same energy when they lose to the Jets, and we beat the Jets. And yeah, keep that same energy. I ain't gonna settle for no criticism of my boy Dak Prescott. That's quite on the sort of whining voice he used when he was doing that whole thing and whatnot. Hopefully I did a good job of getting that general idea. But without that, yeah, the whole thing was like talking about how he doesn't like the unfair criticism the Cowboys get compared to the 49ers and the Eagles when sort of similar situations, losses, opponents, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, bruh, are you just flat out stupid? I mean, look, when you compare the Cowboys' success to the amount of success the Eagles and the 49ers have had over the last few decades, it don't even compare. Or by any metric, over the last 20 years or so, the Eagles and the 49ers have been the classes of the NFC in terms of winning, getting to Super Bowls, all that kind of stuff. Now, it's not like the teams themselves collectively have a trophy case of like 10 Super Bowls they can look into. Eagles have won one in recent time. It was back in 2020, the 2017 season. And obviously, they just got to a Super Bowl this past season. And the 49ers haven't won any Super Bowls since the 90s, but they do have multiple Super Bowls they've gotten to, multiple NFC championship games. Same with the Eagles, gotten to plenty of NFC championship games over the years. Whereas the Cowboys have been running their mouths for years, decades since they've won a Super Bowl. And to me, this has always been the most embarrassing stat. Forget about getting to a Super Bowl. Not have even been able to get to an NFC championship game in almost 30 years now. I mean, that's just flat out pathetic when you look at the amount of teams all the type of franchises that have gotten to conference championship games in the time in about 30 years since the Cowboys have done. It's just flat out embarrassing to where every season I say, forget Super Bowl or bust, just get to the goddamn NFC championship game, because that's such an embarrassing stat. So when you have the success that the Eagles and the 49ers have had in recent times, you're given a little bit more leeway. When you have a game where, maybe you're off for a second, the Eagles just lost to the Jets. Not a loss that I think a lot of people would have, even though the Jets do have a very capable defense and whatnot. But I mean, it's a team that just got to the Super Bowl, and they're still, 5-1 right now, so it's hardly the end of the world. 49ers just lost to the Browns. Micah Parsons pointed that out. But they were on like a 15-game regular season win streak dating back to last season. Brock Purdy had never lost a game that he started and finished prior to this game. And then he brings like, it didn't mention the injuries that the Browns had and whatnot and all that kind of shit. And it's like, it's kind of different when you go into a game knowing that you have these injuries and these players aren't going to play, rather than the 49ers, who McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel got injured during the game. So your sort of game plan and all that just kind of goes like out the window and whatnot to some degree when you have those injuries during the game. So Micah Parsons, you're a smart guy. Just think about these things a little more before you start running your mouth. And then for the Cowboys, like I said, forget Super Bowl. No NFC championship game in the last 30 years. And this team, after looking dominant for the first couple games where the defense was looking good, unfortunately, they did lose Trayvon Diggs. That plays a big part in what I'm going to say next. But, then the next game, they lose to the Cardinals. Lose to the Cardinals, not a great loss. And that's after Micah Parsons and Jerry Jones started running their mouth after the first 2 weeks saying, hey, go and get ready for the Super Bowl. Buy your tickets, because it's going straight to the Super Bowl. And it's a team that's just constantly talking, constantly running their mouth about going to the Super Bowl after not doing shit. Embarrassing playoff loss after embarrassing playoff loss, back-to-back years to the Niners. And we'll see what kind of way that they lose in the divisional round or before this year. Like I said, this team, man, is just always something. And while everyone knows that playing for the Cowboys comes with, unique pressure, because you're playing for like the top tier franchise in terms of coverage, media coverage, promotions, all of that. And some of that may be a little exhausting and whatnot. But everyone certainly knows the benefits that comes with playing with the Cowboys. You take, for example, Dak Prescott. If Dak Prescott was playing for the Tennessee Titans or the Carolina Panthers, his career and the coverage on him wouldn't be anywhere near the type of discussion. You think like Undisputed or something like that, a show like that would do like 3 or 4 topics on him a day. Nah, it just wouldn't be that way. But when you play for the Cowboys, it's a different kind of pressure, different kind of coverage and whatnot, positively and negatively. But I'd honestly say there's more positives and negatives when it comes to that. That goes true to Micah Parsons, who's been a great player, unbelievable player, getting comparisons to Lawrence Taylor and whatnot. But you compare the coverage of him, a great defensive player, to the coverage on another great defensive player like TJ Watt from the Pittsburgh Steelers or Myles Garrett. Both of them having great seasons also. I mean, TJ Watt last year, or it was just a couple of years ago, whenever it was, a couple of years ago, set the record for most sacks in a season. Now, do they get the same kind of coverage that Micah Parsons gets, the same kind of platform, media coverage, celebratory stuff if he does like one thing? I heard this the other day, and it was true. Khalil Mack had like a 6-sack game a couple weeks ago, and there was barely any coverage at all. If Micah Parsons has a 6-sack game, that's just going to be the topic of discussion for a whole day. You'll hear the names Lawrence Taylor and Micah Parsons about 50 times that entire day, and probably in the same show. That's how much the different kind of coverage is for a player like him playing for the Cowboys compared to, let's say, like I said, if he was playing for a franchise like the Falcons, the Panthers. I'm dragging some of these franchises through the mud, but it's just true when it comes to the coverage of those teams compared to the Cowboys. And Micah Parsons, man, he's a great player, but it's just the truth, the different coverage when it comes to playing for the Cowboys and whatnot. So overall, I thought these comments by Micah Parsons was just flat out idiotic. First of all, I don't really think it's a smart idea for a player that's just starting out to do a podcast like every single week. I think only kind of seasoned veterans in whatever sports you're in should be doing that kind of stuff. He's already said some stuff in the weeks that he's been doing it, that he's kind of put his foot in the mouth and whatnot in terms of talking about the Super Bowl, criticizing coaches, and now these flat out idiotic comments. And probably the worst of it all was how he said, like, yeah, that's why I didn't talk to the media this week. And it's all like, oh, so you're one of those that kind of runs from the media when things aren't going your way, or you just want to pout and you just want to go on your podcast and talk about that stuff. That's kind of weak. Don't really like that shit. Like I said, those comments were just flat out idiotic in basically every single aspect.